Welcome to TV Africa News. Thank you so much for joining us and as being part of us. This is Africa Today. My name is Nahawa Kajura, but first are the headlines. Locals boo minister for telling lies as Museveni tours West Nile. Authorities impose curfew on nightlife in Amhara over protests. And UN chief urges more aid on visit to Somalia's displaced. In a sports news today, Floodlight Football, a welcome initiative at Lugogo elsewhere. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. We start with one of our top stories. Now, journalists under their umbrella, the Uganda Human Rights Network for Journalists, have given 4 days to Ugandan police to apologize for the continued brutality on journalists on duty. We have more on this report.
Those are journalists. You spread the journalists.
Following yesterday's events where journalists were paper sprayed by police, they covered medical interns who had staged a demonstration due to non-deployment and delayed allowances in Mulago. Journalists under the umbrellas of Human Rights Network for Journalists Uganda and the Uganda Parliamentary Press Association have demanded the IGP Uganda Police Martin Okoth Chola to apologize in 4 days or face action.
Expect that you will give us a good reception, not your tear gas or pepper spray. So this time we shall be marching to your headquarters, Mr. IGP, on Monday. So the ultimatum is between now and Sunday at midnight.
Besides denouncing, we're employing them to take individual action to the errant officers who went out of their way to conduct themselves in a manner that is ill, that is cruel, and does not meet a man in uniform.
Speaking in a press conference in Kampala, Ivanda Mugabe, the President Uganda Parliamentary Press Association, said that as a way of stopping police brutality once and for all media platforms are required to profile individual police officials engaged in brutalizing journalists.
We are saying this time we shall start profiling, and through this we shall make sure that we have stories aired on each and every TV station, aired on all radio stations, and also in papers, profiling those individual police officers who are harassing journalists in this country. So your family, even the community where you live, will know that this Afande Ogwal and the Commander Kamulia are the ones behind harassing journalists in this country.
These have appealed to the government of Uganda to recognize the role of the media in the socio-economic development of the country.
I'd like to make a passionate appeal to the government of Uganda to recognize the role of the media, to recognize that without the media we cannot go that far. And if we keep on intimidating the press from any other corner, it would mean that eventually the profession called media or journalism in this country will die.
You have your bosses, just like we have ours. If I've done something wrong and you feel like you can't cope up with it, there is court. Like you normally tell us, we will beat you, and then you take us to court. Fine, we are going to court.
Some have continued to wonder what could be the motives of the police officers.
We go on wondering what's the motive of these security guys. Because as a journalist, he has just come to do his work, to do his job, just holding a camera to report what is happening, and then you go ahead to attack him or her, pepper spray him. I think that is indiscipline of the highest order.
From here, I want to show solidarity with the journalists, and I want to tell you that the workers of this country are with you, because you are all what? Workers.
We have already our lawyers deployed to help in pursuit of justice for the victim journalists. Also giving medical treatment because their eyes were affected. We have that as part of the intervention, and also continuing to rally colleagues in the media sector.
It should be noted that this is not the first time for security officers to brutalize journalists on duty. In 2021, journalists were also reportedly beaten up by military police as they covered Robert Kyagulanyi Bobi Wine, who had petitioned the United Nations offices in Kololo. However, President Yoweri Museveni on several occasions has condemned these actions by men in uniform.
All persons assembled here are commanded in the name of the President of the Republic of Uganda to disperse peacefully and go to homes and lawful business.
We have the right
shall be dispersed peacefully by use of live fire against such persons, and such persons shall be liable for arrest and prosecution. These takers, yours, you have it. Spread them. You bring it for the past.
Well, thank you so much, reporter Ahumuza. Moving on, in our top stories, a section of locals across the West Nile sub-region who gathered at Golf Ground on President Museveni's visit aboard Minister for Energy and Mineral Development, Ms. Ruth Nankabira, over the continued electricity crisis in the sub-region. We have more on this report. Minister for Energy and Mineral Development, Ms. Nankabira, was interrupted by hecklers during the speech on Tuesday when she said the region would soon be connected to national grid and that the current demand for power is 11 megawatts, which will even be excess. This incensed some of the locals, mainly the ruling National Resistance Movement supporters, who booed her, with some calling the speech a lie and that they are tired of waiting for stable and reliable power supply. The sub-region has been faced with intermittent power supply generated from the 3.5 megawatt dam in Nyagak and power generated from the 8 megawatt generators by Electromax company. Recently, a youthful metal fabricator, Mr. Alfred Onyethuwon, of Love and Friendship Metal Fabrication and Welding in Pader Town, said he has lost several customers because he cannot complete orders for doors, gates, windows in time because of unreliable power supply. President Museveni has pitched camp in Arobo City as he tours West Nile for 3 days to popularize a parish development model and the poverty alleviation programs, which his government, that has been in power for nearly 40 years, is using as some of the strategies to uplift the lives of Ugandans into the money. Africa Today takes a quick break. We shall come back with the international news. Welcome back from the break. You're still watching TV Africa, the right to know. In international news, restrictions on nightlife and meetings were imposed on Monday in the 3 major cities in Ethiopia's Amhara region, including the most populous, Goda, in the wake of protests against the dismantling of regional military across Ethiopia. We have more on this report.
According to similar statements issued by municipal authorities of Gonda, Des and Dibri Bahan, the restrictions are being imposed by the military command posts in each city, implying that the security there is now in the hands of the Federal Army. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's federal government recently announced that it had begun the process of reassigning members of the military forces that have been gradually built up over the past 15 years by some regional states to the Federal Army or the police. Called Special Forces in Ethiopia, these unconstitutional military units were tolerated until now. Incidents have occurred in Amhara, where the special forces are powerful and provided crucial assistance to the Federal Army during its conflict with the liberal authorities in the Tigray region between late 2020 and late 2022. In all 3 cities, motorized tricycles are now prohibited from traveling at night, and bars and nightclubs must close at 9 p.m. Strikes are prohibited and all meetings must be reported to the authorities. It is also forbidden to carry a weapon or any object that can be used as a weapon, knife, machete, or an iron bar in particular, to set off firecrackers and fireworks, or to wear any army military clothing.
More by international news, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Tuesday visited a camp for internally displaced people in Somalia's southwest. Speaking through a translator, Guterres sat down with some of the displaced to hear their concerns. The UN chief who arrived in Somalia on Tuesday on what he termed a solidarity visit said that he was encouraged by the fact that they have now the capacity that Somalis have deployed to start increasing their possibility to liberate areas in relation to Shabab. Over 1 million people have been displaced in Somalia by a drought which has led to near famine conditions and an Islamist insurgency waged by Al-Shabaab. Guterres remarked that the people of Somalia require massive support from the international community because they lost their property due to the combination of terrorism and drought largely caused by the climate change. The United Nations has launched $2.6 billion call for humanitarian assistance, but Guterres said that appeal was only 15% funded. While famine thresholds have not been breached in Somalia, the UN says about half its population will need humanitarian assistance this year, with 8.3 million affected by the drought. Away from that, 30 years after the assassination of anti-apartheid leader Crisis Hani, many South Africans are still grief-stricken. Now, the nation on Monday commemorated the activist.
Speaking at a memorial ceremony, his widow Hani said that she doesn't have closure. The South African Communist Party, a long-time ally of the ruling ANC in the fight against apartheid, called for a fresh inquiry into the matter with a petition hoping to collect 30,000 signatures. Aged 50, Hani was shot dead in the driveway of his home in Johannesburg on April 10, 1993. The hugely popular figure and then SACP leader was gunned down in front of his daughter by Janus Waus. Waus and his accomplice, Cliff Darby Lewis, had hoped to spark a civil unrest. 1993 was indeed a pivotal year as negotiations to end apartheid had entered their final phase. Janus Waus, who was convicted for murder in October 1993, later cited political anti-communist motives to kill Hani. 3 decades on, many South Africans have questions about the killing, suspecting the convicted did not act alone. Wallow's Israelis on parole last December sparked controversy.
Moving on, the Comoros government asked France on Monday to abandon a planned operation of evictions, destruction of illegal housing and arrests in Mayotte, a French department in the Indian Ocean facing a galloping crime rate against the backdrop of a migration crisis. We have more on this report. The Operation Takeover in Moroccan and conceived by Interior and Overseas Minister Gerard was validated in February by French President Emmanuel Macron, according to a source close to the case. It is expected to begin on April 20th, the end of Ramadan. The migrants living in the targeted slums are all or almost all from the Comoros. On April 5th, Comorian civil society organizations held a press conference to warn of all coming massacre. Intense diplomatic negotiations have taken place in recent weeks between Moroni and French authorities on the subject. In Mayotte, voices have been raised to express the fears raised by such an operation. The island's health personnel have thus recalled is in a press release the dramatic consequences of previous large-scale interventions in the fight against immigration. The president of the National Consultative Commission on Human Rights, Jean-Marie, wrote to Minister Demanin to urge him to re-announce this project considering the risk of aggravating social fractures and tensions in an already very fragile context and the infringement of the fundamental rights of foreigners in the context of massive expulsions. We take a quick break, she'll come back with business, health and sports. Welcome back from break. You're still watching TV Africa, the right now. Talking matters business, some 300 demonstrators from opposition parties waved Tunisian flags and carried signs with the images of detainees at the rally organized by the main opposition coalition, the National Salvation Front. We have more on this report.
Since early February, authorities in the North African country have arrested more than 20 political opponents and personalities including politicians, former ministers, businessmen, trade unionists, and the owner of Tunisia's most popular radio station, Mossack FM. At Sunday's rally, Samir Ben Ammar, an official with the Al Jamhari of the Republican Party, called for a national dialogue in order to draw up a roadmap to save Tunisia and return to the democratic path. Seized, who has seized almost total power since he froze parliament and sacked Tunisia's government in July 2021, claims those arrested were terrorists involved in a conspiracy against the state's security. Opponents accuse him of reinstating autocratic rule in the North African country, which seemed to be the sole democracy to have emerged from the Arab Spring uprisings in the MENA region over a decade ago. The political situation in Tunisia comes alongside mounting debt and cost of living crisis.
In a health news today, it was run after run on Tuesday morning at Mulago Guest House as police tried to disperse pre-medical interns who were holding placards protesting the delayed commencement of their internship. We have more on this report. The pre-interims were intercepted in Wandegear as they made their way to Parliament to deliver a petition to the Speaker about their plight, which also includes their general welfare arising from shortage of funds due to budget cuts. The Kampala Metropolitan Police Deputy Spokesperson Mr. Luke Owesigire confirmed that the three who are now detained at Wandegear Police Station will be charged with inciting violence. Before their arrest, the medical interns, together with the executive from Uganda Medical Association, held a media briefing at Mulago Guest House, Kampala, where they addressed their grievances. As the press conference was still ongoing, police arrived and summoned the owner of the guest house, who also invited the organizers of the press conference for a private chat. The presser for about 2 hours thereafter, but police remained outside the premises waiting what would happen next. After the press conference, the medics held placards while chanting, "We want development," as they marched out of the guest house. The police responded by pepper spraying them, including 2 journalists who were covering the proceedings. In sports news today, football under floodlights is officially back in Uganda after some years at the Mandela National Stadium, Nambole. Now, as Mandela undertakes a major facelift and rehabilitation, the floodlights project has sprouted at a number of other venues and sports amenities. We have more on this report.
The fast-rising FASO and small-sided games facilities in the country have made the best use of these floodlights. Lately, the MTN Omondi Stadium in Lugogo, Kampala City and St. Mary's Stadium Chitende in Wakiso District have had the floodlights fixed. On Easter Sunday, it was history in the making as Kampala Capital City Authority Football Club hosted the first ever night football game in the Star Times Uganda Premier League at MTN Omondi Stadium Lugogo, installed by Chint Electric. The match between KCCA FC and UPDF kicked off at 6 p.m. under the natural light. It was euphoric as the beam of lights were switched moments towards the dusk. The light emitted from the 4 poles strategically placed at the different corners of the pitch spoke volume. Shahil Anisha Mhozi, KCCA Football Club Chief Executive Officer, was delighted upon the experience of having a game under floodlights at Lugogo.
Well, thank you so much for being a loyal audience from where we started from. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We should keep updating you. It is TV Africa, the right to know.